Okay guys, Chip here, and let's talk about hero inserts. Hero inserts, they're objects that when you look at a SCI-BOX or any kind of design, it's a thing that you might focus on. And this is the one that we're going to create today. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. But before we get into that, I want to kind of talk a little bit about inspiration. So here are some Stable Diffusion renders that I generated, and I saw how cool glass was kind of working in some of this stuff, right? So as you can see, there's some displays with stuff inside it. I'm not too sure about if this real smooth look is what I'm after, but this is kind of an interesting one because you've got some glass here and glass here. And one of the things that you're noticing about glass is glass works when you can see stuff behind it, right? So as you think about creating something with glass, you probably want to think about creating something that has something behind it. Again, here we see this textured background. You can see through here on some of these glass back to the background. And this one in particular, I really liked. I like the extra detail in the glass. And notice how the glass kind of overhangs here and it's on top of this surface. So you can see that it hangs out and you've got these nice edges that tells you it's glass, maybe a little bit of a reflection there. And then I looked at some glass tables and I thought, that might be an interesting setting. So I looked at some SCIFI tables and thought, yeah, that might be kind of cool to create something that looks like this as part of a setting. I also noticed that, again, when you put glass in a display and you can see through it, it gives you a little bit more of a sci-fi feeling to things. Here's another one of the desks that we were looking at. And this was interesting because this is a hologram. And what was interesting to me about this was that we have a box and then inside it we have a 3D object. And how do we create this shader that we can get this kind of extra blue glow on the outside that you see on all this? That might be something that's interesting. Not sure we're going to cover that here, but that's one of the things that got me thinking. Another example, again, a display floating up here so you can see through it, and yet you've got some of the reflections coming down into the surface here. And then I took that same image that we started with, and I just asked Stable Diffusion to kind of generate some different variations on it. And here's some of the things that I came up with. These are kind of like tablets. Some of them are interesting, especially the way they deal with some of the material changes around the bezel here. I kind of like that. Anyway, so that's the inspiration that we're going to use to create this insert. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm in Blender and I've deleted everything. And so we're starting with a brand new scene. Shift A will just create a cube. And you remember we did a lot of this in the last episode also. I'm going to go ahead and assign this SY cutter, right click on it, shade smooth, go over here into my normals and auto smooth it. And now we're good to go. Then I'm going to Shift D, duplicate it in place. Right click to leave it in place, scale it down and lift it up. Let's scale it a little bit more, maybe something like this. And I'll lift it up. This is going to be the actual hole, right, that we're going to use. But before I do that, I want to Shift D it one more time and I'm going to lift this one up a little bit. I'll take this hole and select this and hit Control minus. Now I've got the hole down there. And then this right here is going to be our glass plane, right? So I'll hit this, scale it up a little bit. Let's go into orthographic view 7, look at the top view and wireframe, and yeah, that's probably pretty darn close. Let me see, maybe I'll just scale it down just a little more and maybe make it a little thinner, and let's Control A and we'll save scale right now. So that's going to be called glass. I'm going to call that the glass, and this is our cutter, cube cutter. So that's where we're going to start. Now, the thing I want to start with, let's grab this cutter and let's just move it up a little bit. What I want to do is, as we talked about earlier, I want this glass to be see-through. I want to see stuff below it, and I want to see a lot of stuff below it. And I'm trying to think, well, what's the best way to create a lot of stuff on here? And the truth is that what we need to do is we need to take this plane and use geometry nodes to add a bunch of stuff. And I'm not going to go through all that because I have Simple SciFi Flex installed and I can do that really quickly. So let's do that next. Okay, so let's go ahead and add some Simple SciFi to the inside of this box. But first we need to have a face to do that with. And because this box is already set up with modifiers, we're going to need to apply those modifiers. And then we can just basically get rid of the cutter because we don't need it anymore. And we'll tab, let's hide the glass, and we'll tab into this and we'll just select that face. And with that face selected, we'll go into Simple SciFi and we're going to choose panel Y, and we're going to choose the panel generator. And with that all set, I'm going to basically say apply generator to faces. And there we have it. So we have our faces set up now with this panel Y. And we're out of the edit mode. And first we're going to use the bottom level density. So I'm going to just basically crank this up a little bit and change the size of it. Oops, way too big. And then just keep cranking this up. So I'll get something kind of, a lot of stuff going on down there. That kind of looks about right. Density a little bit. Yeah, something like that. Maybe adjust the size a little more. And that's the bottom D-pack. And then we want to do the top D-pack. Once we have that done, let's go ahead and adjust the size of that. Maybe to 2. And then we'll just come over here and adjust the density of the top. And I think the size on the bottom is still just a little too high. Let's do this. Move this down and make the top size a little bigger. There we go. Something like this. So you can start to see how that's working. Now, once I get this done, I'm gonna basically look at it from the top view. And I want to see if I can get some interesting details in here. And I can just use the seed tool to get me what I want. And maybe that's something good. Might like that. Okay, so now that that's done, the next thing to do is we're going to apply some materials. Okay, so quickly we'll jump into our shader editor. And let's go into viewport shading. And you can see this is what we have. These are our vertex, these are our colors. But what I want to do is I want to basically click on here. Let's go back into our object. By the way, this is our cube, and this is our geometry nodes object. It created that from that one plane that we did. And what I want to do is I want to jump into this material, and I really want to say material preview needs to be turned to 1. And I'm going to turn this off so we can kind of see what's going on. You can see way too complicated right off the bat. So the way I'm going to fix that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off this top side mix. That helps a lot, but we still have all this bump stuff, and I'm just going to basically just unhook that and now let it go ahead and refresh, and that's really what I want. So next thing I want to do is I want some of these to be metal and some of these to be plastic, right? So the way I do that is I'm going to Control-Shift-Click on just this node, and it's going to wire up directly because I have Node Wrangler installed. It's going to wire this directly up to the material. So watch what happens. When I do this, Control-Shift-Click, that's just the colors, right? One more time, that's the metallic, right? So metallic being black means it's 0. And if it's 0, it means it's not metal at all, right? So let's go over here and let's turn metallic on. Okay, now it's 1. Now everything's metal. Well, that's not good either. So what I want to do is I want to grab this metallic threshold, and I just want to kind of move this. So this is basically to make some things metallic and some things not, right? So as you can see, the white things are 1, they're metallic. The black things are going to be plastic. So that's great. But what I also want is I want the metallic things to be reflective. And so we know that reflectivity is going to be 0 in roughness. So if it's all the way to the left, it's going to be very reflective. It's all the way to the right, it's going to be very dull. And I want the metal to be reflective. I want the plastic to be not so much, right? So we're going to go back in here. And I'm going to Control-Shift-Click one more time. And now we're looking at the roughness, right? So you can see that the metal, let's go back. Here's the metal. These chips right here are metal, right? So I'm going to click on roughness one. You can see they're white, which means that they're not very reflective at all. So I need to make them reflective. So what I need to do is go into the roughness settings and just drag this invert and move it. Now I've got everything kind of different colors. It's darker, but the contrast needs to kind of get punched up a little bit so we can see it a little bit. That's a little better. So I'll move the contrast up and I'll move the brightness down just a little bit, and I'll just keep playing with this. Yeah, that looks probably about right. So that's gives me not pure blacks and pure whites. So now with that done, I can go over here and Control-Shift-Click on here, and it's going to show me as we go in here. Let's hit the 5 button. You can see that the metal, some of the stuff's metal and it's reflective, and other stuff's not. So that looks really good. I like the way that looks. And the next step is now we're going to need to convert all this to a mesh and trim it. Okay, next is probably the hardest thing we're going to have to do, and that is we're going to have to take all of this and convert it into faces and keep the materials, and then we're going to have to clip out the rest of it. So first I'm going to do is I'm just going to name this, GN for geometry node. So I have that set up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into local mode, tab into this object, and Shift D, and grab this plane that was here, and then P and selection. So basically what I've got now is I've got tab out of it. I've got this object, which is the cube, and I've got this other one, this plane. I'm going to name this one cutter. And frankly, I probably could have just used the cutter we had before, but I'm going to take this, say A, E, move it up, something like that, tab out of that, and let's just hide that. And let's go back into our object mode. And now with this done, we're going to have to do something that some of you may not like doing very often, but this is complicated. And so in order to follow along, what I would suggest is go into documentation. So let's do that. Click this button here, takes you to here. And then what we do is we go in and scroll down, and it says how to convert your instance geometry to editable meshes. Click on that. And it'll tell you, there's a little video on it, but it tells you how to do this. And you got to follow this exactly, or else it's going to crash or something's not going to work right. So material preview needs to be 0. Render matte pass is set to 1. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Render matte pass 1, material 0. So we've done that. Next thing we want to do is we want to make instances real from the apply menu. It says go into local mode. And sometimes with complicated files, that works. That's smarter to do that. So let's just go ahead and do that anyway. We'll go into local mode, and there's our object, and we'll go to object, and we'll say apply make instances real. And what's going to happen is that we have all these curves that have been generated. And I'm just for the sake of this, I'm going to say make a new collection, and I'm going to call this instances. And I'll move everything into there. And if I hide that, you'll see I still have this. This is the old geometry nodes that we have. So I'm going to turn this off so we don't get confused. And I'm going to go back into this instances, turn that back on, and I need everything to be selected. And if I accidentally select off of it, what's nice about this is I can right click on instances and say select all the objects, and that's good. So next thing we want to do is we want to go into object, relations, make single user, object, and data. So we'll go to object, relations, make single user, objects, and data. It'll take a little bit. Shouldn't be too long though. So that worked pretty good. Then we need to apply the scale and rotation to all the selected objects. So object, apply, rotation and scale. Then we join all the objects to 1. So we go object, join. It's dimmed out. And that's because we have to have one object selected to join to. So I'm going to just shift click here. Then I'll say object, join. Now everything's in one object now. Okay, there we have it. So now that we have everything in one object, we want to basically make sure that we have the right material assigned to it. There we have it. Okay, and so now we're ready to basically, let's go back out of local mode. We need to trim this up. So how do we do that? Well, we have this cutter that we already created. So let's go ahead and select it. So we'll select this and we'll select the cutter, and I'm going to go back into a local mode here, and I'm going to take this cutter, I'm going to move it down so make sure it's intersecting. And so what I want to do is I'll select this, I'm going to add a Boolean modifier. I want to set it to fast and intersect, and then I want to use this object to do it. Okay, and then with this object, I just need to hide that cutter object. You'll see that we have this settled down nicely. So, and then I'm just going to say apply, right? So with this set like this, I'll say apply all. I'll go back to my cutter here, turn it back on, and let's just delete it. Okay, so now we have another problem, and that is that if I look at this object, we've got 1.2 million triangles. This is way too much for an insert. We could do maybe 40, 50,000 maybe. If you look at this, it's probably what it's worth. Let's go ahead and figure out how we're going to solve this problem. So what we'll do is I'm going to go in here and I'll go to the top view. And I want to make sure I'm in perspective view, not orthographic. Orthographic's going to, this technique's not going to work in orthographic. It's only going to work in perspective. So I'm going to go in perspective view, and I'm going to tab in here. And I'm going to be in face mode, and I'm going to just basically box select all of that. And then I'm just going to press the L button on my keyboard, which is going to select the linked parts of this. And then we're going to hit the P button, and we're going to select separate by selection. So we have 2289. This is the new one, right? So we still have the same number of vertices. I'm going to tab out of this. I'm going to take the old one, not the new one, and delete it. And look, now we have 50,000 faces. So we've basically went from over 1 million down to 50,000 triangles, only 9,000 faces. So much, much more efficient. And that's how we solve that problem. Now, if I go back in here, we'll see that we're got our bottom area. It's all set up and ready to go. Okay, so now we're on to the next part of making our hero object, and let's talk about the glass. So let's take this glass, we're going to drop it down, and let's add a modifier, a bevel modifier to it. Actually, before we do that, let's just tab into it. We'll hold the Alt and Control key, and we'll click there. I'll get all those edges. And I'm going to go into my item, and I'm going to say the mean bevel weight to 1 on that. Now I'll go in here, and with this bevel, I'll go with edges, and I'll say weight. And see, you can see that I've kind of give it a little bit of an angle there. Let's give it 12, something like that, or maybe 8. 8's fine. 8's probably plenty. And let's just offset it just a little bit, something like that. And then I'll add another bevel modifier. And this one is going to be, it's just one segment. Let's just move it down a little bit, just a little bit, something like that. And that's going to give us a nice reflection. We'll go into EV materials and find the glass. And we'll use this glass universe, add that material to there. And there we have it. And we can move it down. And so what I want to see is I want to see how it looks as we look down on it. And this is going to be rendered in cycles. So let's quickly set up an HDR map. So I'll just go in here and say new. And the color is going to be an environment texture. And we're going to open up one. I'm going to use this one right here. And if we go under world, we'll see this. Here it is right here. And let's go ahead now and turn on this HDRI. And I might want to make this like 2, make it a little brighter. And if I go into my film, I can hit this transparent button for the background so I don't see that. So I can kind of start to see, you know, how reflective this is. Shift A, let's just go ahead in our case and let's add a area light and let's just move it above, you know, and maybe give it 500 watts so we can get an idea of what's going on. Okay, so that's kind of good. I'll move that area light. I'm going to move it into a new collection called Gaffer. So I'll put all that stuff in there so I can hide it. But anyway, so now I can start to see, I can see through this fairly well. I've got a little nice edge reflection on here. We'll deal with the lighting in another video, but I just want to get this thing up and running kind of quickly so we can get an idea of what we're working on. So I moved the strength down to 0.3, and let's just take this light and let's kind of move it off as well. You know, a little bit of different shading on the sides. 800 watts. Okay, so let's look at this from the top view, and this is the front. So what I'm going to do is I want to add little stanchions off of this surface, and I want them to be part of this surface. So they're going to be unions. So I'll go into my Design Magic, the Plus K-Pack, which is unions, and I'll grab this solid verts one, and I'm going to set it up so that snap mode is off. So I want to stick it, you know, maybe right around here. So if we look at from the top view, it's on this side. And let's just go into orthographic projection. I'm going to solid mode, and we'll look at it here. And then I can just tab into this, and I can start to build a clip of sorts around this area right here. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to select all 3 of these, say X, and delete the vertices. I just have this one now. And I'm going to say G, and I'm going to just kind of sketch out what I want. And by hitting the E button, I can extrude. Let's see, let's move it. E, maybe extrude. E all the way down. E over. E up. And I might go like to this spot right here. E, come over here. E up here. And then A, and then F gives me a face. Now, I'm using Ops² Toggle VP Display, and it has the ability to align verts in the viewport, right? So that means that I can just go over here and grab these 2. I'm the Z, so it's Control Alt Z, aligns those up. This is the Y, Control Alt C, Control Alt C, Control Alt Z. So you get the idea what's going on. Control Alt Z and Control Alt C. So that kind of lines everything up. And I might even just take these and let's make those line up like that nicely as well. And so if I tab out of this and I look at our modifiers, I see I've got this little bevel, and I don't have anything set for that, but I can just go in and grab a couple of these and go over here and just basically, you know, add a little bit of, just a little bit of an angle there. That's 0.07. Maybe I grab this one. 0.07 also. So that kind of looks good. So tab out of that. Now we look at this and we say, okay, that's kind of too thick for us. So I'm going to go to my solidify here, And actually, before I do that, I'm going to control A. Let's just hit the scale button so we're on the right scale. And then let's just, in the solidify, let's just move the thickness down a little bit to where we think that it's going to work. And that's about right. So now we move it over. Let's go to the top views, like this. And we move this over like so, something maybe like that. And then, of course, since we're in KitOps, we can say X and Y. And we've basically mirrored it all over. Okay, so now I want to add one more detail to this. And let's go back up to the plus again. And let's add this cube rounded thing right here. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to add the insert. I'll stick it like this. I'll move it down, something like this. And we'll just go in here. And I'll just move it like that. Maybe a little bit more. Move this over. Kind of center it directly on this thing, something like that. And then maybe stretch it out, Control A, scale, something like that. I can take that again, X, Y, and we've got that set up quite nicely. Now I'm going to go to my subtraction ones, and I'm going to grab this one that's a mirror, and I'm going to select the glass, and I'm going to add that insert here, and I'm going to hit the F button for face. So I've got directly in the face. So I'll go here and let's move it up here. I just want this to be kind of just to cut out just a little bit like that. And so let's mirror that on the Y. And then let's add it again. And let's move it down one more time. And this time I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to scale it down and bring it right in, something like this. So if I look at this, make it scale it up just a little bit, something like that. And maybe I'll turn on the bezels on this. So I get a little kind of a round cut. Matter of fact, I might do it on both of them. That's kind of a see-through thing, right? So I'm going to maybe make it a little bigger. Move it out this way. And that's really pretty much what we have ready to go now. Let's take a look at this. And we can start to see through some of the stuff. So that's good. So now the next thing we're going to work on is going to be the actual display inside of here. Okay, so now let's talk about how we're going to create this interior graphic inside here, inside the display. So what we'll do first is Shift A, and we're going to create a plane. And I'm going to scale it and move it up. And let's look at it from the side view. And I want to put it directly kind of in the middle of this thing. And then let's look at it from top view, and let's scale it so that it's, kind of gets something like this. Okay, that's probably good enough right there. Okay, so there's our plane. If we can see it, it should be sitting directly on the inside of this, right? So this is going to be our graphic. And now with that plane selected, I'm going to change the name and call it GUI, Graphic User Interface. Okay, so we'll put that there. Then I'm going to go over to a folder here that I've got. And this folder is a bunch of different, as you can see, it's a bunch of interfaces that I've created using Midjourney and Disco Diffusion and Stable Diffusion and even Dolly. And this is the one I want. So I'm going to scroll back over here. And here's the image that I want to use. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag it anywhere that's not on an object over here. Okay, when I drag it, you'll see that it shows up like this, right? We had to turn this on. And once it's there, I'm going to hit X and delete that. Okay, and then we're going to go back in. Let's go ahead and go back into our object here. And I'm going to grab that GUI and let's move that. Let's just move it up. Let's move it to the scene collection right there. Okay, so the GUI is here. I'm going to grab that and we'll go into our object shader editor, and I'm going to create a new object, and I'm going to call this GUI. I'll go over here and I'm going to add Shift A, and let's just add a texture, image texture like this, and we're going to lock it into the base color, right? So it goes like that. And the other thing we want to do is go over here, and we're going to turn this viewport display here, blend mode. We want this to be alpha blend, shadow mode, none. And let's put screen place reflection on as well. And then we're just going to click here, and we're going to basically, that's the image that we have. And you see it pops up right there. But the problem is, as you can see, let's go ahead and zoom in here. you can't see through it at all, right? So, and that's the issue that we're going to have. So what I want to do is I want to make this transparent. So what I'm going to do is I'll take this, actually before I make it transparent, I want to make it emissive. So I'll take the color and I'll stick it on emission. So that's going to be the color of the mission. And then the mission strength, let's give it maybe 2. And then we'll come back out and you'll see, let's let this thing. So it's kind of quite a bit brighter now. And even if we don't have any lights, now I want to actually make it transparent. So what I'll do is I'll say Shift A and I'm going to add a color ramp. Okay, so this color ramp is going to sit in here and it's going to control, actually we'll put it down here. It's going to control the alpha. So we'll take this color and we're going to add it right into the alpha. There we go. Now you can start to see that we can see through it. Really what I need to do now is I really probably need to be in cycles because I want to see exactly what that's going to look like in cycles. As I push this black up, it'll get less and less transparent, but it's kind of harsh. So we're going to go in and use a B-spline, and that's going to help us a little bit. So we'll push this up a little bit so we can see through like this. And then the white, I'm going to come into white and I'm going to pull this down just a tad. So again, you can still see through. And that's going to be our material. Okay, so there's one more thing we want to do before we're finished here, and that is we're going to add a little edge lighting to this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to Shift A and go ahead and I'm going to add an area light. Okay, and let's just call this edge light. Okay, and I'm going to move it up, and I'm going to move it up so that it sits just below our display. So if we look in here, we're going to see that right here up above is our GUI right there. And here's our edge light. It's inside the glass right above it. And let's go to the top view and I'm going to scale it. Hit the S button and we'll just scale it out a little bit. Something, you know, like this. I don't really want it to get outside. I want to keep it inside these rim areas right there. And then let's go back into our cycles view. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to just give it a color, like a blue color. And you'll see that that light really does a nice job. Even at a small amount, 10 watts, I can maybe bunch it to 20 if I want to get a little more in there. But it does a nice job of getting all the way out there. I might just, you know, extend it this way just a little bit more. Maybe like that. And the other thing I can do while I'm in here is click on here and click on the glass, right? So I get the glass. And let's look at our index of refraction. So if I go to 1, that glass is perfectly clear. There's no reflections, right? And 1.45 is glass. And if I maybe, you know, 1.9 is going to be much more refractive, but acrylic is about 1.33. So, and I like the way acrylic works. So I'm going to leave it about 1.33. So now we're pretty complete with our insert. All we need now to do is to set it up and save it as an insert. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, now we want to convert this whole thing into an insert. So let's first take everything, Control A, and let's just hit scale so that we know we have everything set up for the right scales, which looks like it is. Nothing moved, so I'm happy about that. Then I'm going to grab just our cube, and as we've done in the past, let's take a look at this, and I'll tab into it, hit 3, grab bottom face, Control plus, and then we're going to say X verts, and so that gives us this little box down below. Select all, and we'll go into select loops, select boundary loop, and all I need to do is just move this up a little bit, and then hit F for face, and then you know, I want to look at the face orientation. It's all flipped around, right? So I can say mesh normals, recalculate outside. Oops, hit A. Mesh normals, recalculate outside, and it gets everything working just exactly the way we want it. With that done, I'm going to note that we've got these objects right here. So this actually has some union objects connected to it. Really, I want to separate those because I don't want those union objects to be part of the cutter because they're part of the union, right? So I'm going to just go into here and I'm going to just, with the group mode turned off, I'll just delete them. Now, they're still here. You can see they're still there. They're just not part of our cutter right here. So let's give this a name. We're going to call this one Hero-02 Display. Okay, and then I'm going to, you know, Control Alt Shift Z to get us into wireframe mode. And let's go to the front view. And now I'm going to select everything A, and let's just move it down, basically the 0 spot on the Z axis. So, and I remember that this right here wants to be just underneath there. So if I hit G and Z and move it down just a tad bit like that, I know we've got everything the way we want it to be, right? Then I want to make sure that this is my cutter, right? So I want to make sure that has the correct origin. That has to be set, that its origin is down here. So that doesn't work. So what I need to do is I need to set that origin. So I can say Control A and I can say location, and it just basically moves the origin right there. So that's perfect now. And now I can do A, select everything, and this bright orange, our cutter still the main selected thing. And we're going to basically go under Object and say Parent, and we're going to parent the object to that. And now if I just select this and say G, I move it around, that's good. Let's power save this. Take one more quick look at it, make sure that it looks good. So yeah, let's first go in and find the K-Pack we want to put this in. We've got it named Hero O2 Display. We're going to right click on this and we're going to say Kit Ops, create insert, use object origin. Once we've done that, let's save what we've got here and let's go and edit this insert. We'll hit the edit insert button. And now we're going to look at this and we're going to see what we got. So what I really want to do is I want to see what these things are. If I go into Kit Ops, I'll see that this is a cutter union. That's exactly what I want. These are cutter unions. This is a cutter, and I don't want this a difference. This is a cutter insert. This is cutting the insert. It's not cutting the object, it's cutting the actual glass, right? And it's cutting the display. And this one is a cutter, and it's going to be cutting an insert. So we just want to make sure that we got those set the way we want them. And then I can save the insert, and let's go File, New, General, and we'll just take this object. Let's give it a different material, just so that we can see how it works. And let's go into here. Details, and we'll find that one. That one was Hero 2 Display right here. And I'm going to make the snap mode to the face, add the insert here. Let's, reduce it, Q, face orientation, and there we have it. So you can see this is our new display. Looks good. Works well. Might be a little too frosty, so if you want to cut back on that frostiness, we can do that by going into our insert and finding that area light right here, and we'll just make that 10. Okay, and then let's go into the material for the GUI, which is right there, and let's move this over to the left so we can cut back a little bit on there, maybe so we can see through it a little better. So you can adjust all of these things, and then we can, of course, go to the glass. And if we want to, we can even cut that back, the IR back farther to like 1.2 or something and see through a little more. But anyway, you can play around with those things. And that's really the insert, and that's how this works. So I hope this was helpful. The next session that we're going to work on is going to be creating the actual model. So thanks for watching. See you online.